Yeah, thanks, Bart, for the nice introduction, and thanks, Greg. You both for putting on the PowerPoint because I all day yesterday and all day today we didn't even have internet at my workplace, so I'm trying to find the directions here, and I have to call Martha on her personal phone just to so I can get here. So that's great. I'm gonna dive right into it. I know Bart asked me to tell a couple of stories about my life and also how I became a environmentalist and how I get to DNR. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. Once again, my name is Kao Thao. If you really pronounce my correct name, which I'm gonna maybe mention on later on too, but if you pronounce a Hmong, it's Gao. Gao with the G, and it's basically G-A U or GAO instead of KAO. So when I came over from Laos, it was printed like that. So basically, I'm known as Kao. But if you talk to my relative, if you say Kao, a lot of times they don't know who I am. So it's Gao, but I prefer Kao now. That's what it is. So all right, so perfect. So before I start, since you guys are the Audubon, I want to ask you about something about this. What is wrong with this picture? Anybody have any ideas? Perfect. It's the fawn. Let me see if I could. Oh, there it is. Because you'll never see a fawn in the fall, and this whole picture it's been basically been manipulated. It's not there. I got the bugs from somewhere else, the doe from somewhere else, the little thing from somewhere else. So this is what happened when I started with the University of Minnesota in computer graphics. So nothing on this picture is correct. That's right. All right. So to start out with, I was born in 1971 in Laos. And if you know much about Laos, Laos is a country that it's basically a landlocked country between China, Vietnam on the east, Cambodia on the south, Thailand, basically southwest. And then Myanmar, or formerly Burma, on the west. And basically, it's a tropical, countries out there, normally full of jungles, steamy jungles. I went to visit there in 2005, and I wasn't comfortable because the temperature was pretty much about 110, 113. I think it was 120 one of those days, and I was begging to come back to Minnesota, but so landlocked. And now, how do I get here? I was born during the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War starts in 1955 and in 1975. So I was born in 1971, which is pretty much almost at the end of the Vietnam War when Americans pulled out. So during that time, if you know much about the Vietnam War and what happened in Laos, it's basically that little map of Laos right there. That's a Ho Chi Minh Trail with all the little arrow, the long one. North Vietnam, basically aligned with Russia, China, communist country, and then South Vietnam was aligned with the U.S. and other U.S. ally countries. So at the time, North Vietnam tried to overtake South Vietnam, and that's how the war was. Laos, and that little area right there, Laos was in between there. Ho Chi Minh goes through Laos, and at that time, Laos was a neutral country, or tried to be a neutral country. But on the upper Laos, those two little fingers right there, the U.S. has a secret satellite there to monitor Southeast Asia, and if that would have been falling into communists, and there is no satellite there, so the U.S. actually recruited a lot of the hill tribe, mainly. Most of the minorities there were Hmong hill tribe, and the U.S. actually recruited a lot of Hmong, especially the CIA, train them to basically defend that area, make sure the North Vietnamese don't get in that area. So that's how it is, and so that's how my dad got involved, because he was one of the CIA recruit. to defend the U.S. Satellite there, satellite base there. So now I know that I just want to put this one in there really quickly. The picture that you see on the right, the black and white picture was taken way earlier, and this is a recent picture. To every one of us, the Vietnam War ended in 1975. To a lot of Hmong down there, the Vietnam War is still going on. The resistance are still waiting for Americans to return. A lot of resistance are still waiting for Americans to return. And once the U.S. left Laos, the Hmong population were basically decimated and basically persecuted. The Pathet Lao and the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, basically just go after them and just start killing them out in the jungle. So most of the time, the resistance on U.S. side basically just hide in the jungle, and that's how I started out in the jungle there. And that's fine. And so my very first memory as I was growing up, my very first memory is hearing a helicopter, and my dad grabbed me and we ran into a cave underneath a mountain, a cliff. So that was my very first memory of childhood. So throughout the whole time I was in Laos, there's no peace at all. You basically have to hide in the jungle, eat whatever's there, depend on nature, and that's why it's really important. That's why I want to preserve. We'll talk about later on too, but that's very important to me. The planet is basically a life force. Everything is really important, and so for that one. Now, just quick talking about the journey from Laos to Thailand to U.S. The reason I put this on is because during the journey, when I was probably about 4 or 5 or so, that's how I remember most of the journey. When you run through the jungle of Laos, you really have to be very, very quiet. You can't make any noise, which means you can't chop down tree. You can't hunt for animals. I remember so many times when we're running from Laos to Thailand across over the Mekong River. You can't really walk during the daytime. Your group cannot, or family cannot walk during the daytime. You have to choose the nighttime. You can't walk in any human path or road. You have to take the thickest jungle through, because anywhere there's road and path, a human path, there will be enemy waiting to ambush. So during the whole time, we basically just go through. But later on, the enemy, especially North Vietnam or most of the Pathet Lao, they knew that the Hmong were trying to get to Thailand, so they basically also ambush in the middle of the jungle too. And walking through a lot of trail, I will see something like this. This is not part of it, but I will see something like this, especially clothing that will basically just scatter everywhere if there's an ambush. And on the trip, a lot of times you'll see people that got shot. They're just lying on the trail, on the road, newly shot, or even people that died about a couple of days ago, half decayed. I'll see that, and my parents basically just say, don't look, just keep walking. And that's the journey that I have on there. And to survive there, we basically, like I said, we basically just have to gather what the jungle provide. Ended up in Thailand, we were put in camps. There's a couple camps in Thailand. But before you get to Thailand, crossing over the Mekong River, a lot of people actually die on the Mekong River trying to cross over. A lot of time, if there's a connection between the group and a Thai civilian that could take a canoe or at least a boat in the middle of the night to pick you up, then you'll probably have a better chance. A lot of them, they either swim over or trying to make makeshift raft from bamboo to get over. And if you're on the Laotian side, and any soldier that see you, they will shoot you. They'll shoot to kill. If you're crossing over during the daytime, the Thai soldiers on the border will shoot to kill. But if you sneak over at night, you have to have a connection. with a person. You can't have a connection with the authority. So when we would cross over, there probably about 100 in our group, and join the journey to the river. I remember one time, since you're walking in the middle of the night, when you're walking in the middle of the night, you have to step on the footprint or footstep of the person in front of you. Since it was dark, as I remember when I was coming in there, there's about 100 in the group that was coming, and it was so dark you can only see about maybe the person in front of you. If they are about 10 feet in front of you, you can't really see them. You only see a little silhouette. And what happened was, it was the couple with two little kids. The dad was carrying the older kid, was ahead of the wife, carrying the probably about 4-month-old baby. And since she also carried a lot of heavy baggage, she was a little slower. My dad was basically about 4 people behind her, and then my mom and my brother and myself, and then my other brother behind me. And suddenly in the middle of the night, we hear this really loud explosion just right in front of my dad. And we were taught that if you hear an explosion, just scatter and hide as far as you can. And basically, I don't remember anything. All I remember is that by the time they said it's safe to come out, I was behind a tree, somewhere about maybe 50 feet away. So when we came out, what I saw was the wife, and was all blown up. Her legs are all gone. There was blood everywhere. There's a little moonlight, so I can see that. And she was screaming at the whole time. And basically the husband, everybody said, just go, because what with the explosion, the enemies will know that there's people there, they'll come. So basically the dad basically just grabbed the little child, was crying, put on his back with the other child, and then he said, we have to go. We can't stay here with you. And then the lady said, yeah, I want to go. And she was crying and screaming. And then we all just left. And by the time we reached the other valley, I still hear her screaming that she want to go with us. So once you hit Thailand, if you can't get into Thailand, once you get into Thailand, you cross the Mekong River, the authority basically will take you to a camp and in a base, and then they took any valuable that you have. So I remember as a child, if you have parents, the Thai soldier will search for any valuable in your bag, on your body, whatever. So my dad actually gave me a little silver bar about this long, put it on my waist, because the kids just run around and play, so the Thai soldiers don't search that. But I remember seeing a lady with a bigger silver bar, and she refused to give to a Thai soldier, and then he basically used the stock on the gun and hit her right in the face. She was on the ground. He took the silver bar. So that was nice. But just talking about that survival, I already mentioned that. What do you do in the forest? And I already mentioned this, which I thought I was going to mention this first, but you'll eat anything that's available. And what this little kid is washing was basically tree roots and also vine roots. Some of these I think are wild yam that was out there. I remember digging tonsil. I remember eating fern, tree bark. If you're really hungry, there's nothing around, tree bark, banana heart, anything that's edible. There's also tons and tons of poisonous plants. If you don't get the right plants, and some of these are very, very poisonous that you can die within an hour if you ate the wrong plant. So you have to be very careful. As a child, my parents trying to teach me how to eat what's right and what's wrong. There's a lot of waters out there, streams especially, if you can catch a fish, which really doesn't make any noise. So hand catch, spear, trap, if you can set it out there. Or like I said, there's a lot of edible stuff in the forest that you can actually just gather, especially in the jungles. All right, I know that this little screen, I was going to delete it, but just I'm going to go really, really fast. And this is part of it. In 2005, when I went out there, I know that this is a method of farming in Laos. It's slash and burn. You guys probably seen slash and burn, which is very detrimental to any forest at all. So it started out with a pristine forest. You go out there, Use any tool you can, especially axe and knife. Chop the whole forest down. And some of these forests are basically pristine old growth forest. Set on a fire, wait a couple months, set on a fire. There's burn. If it doesn't completely burn, you gather all the twigs that are not burned, pile together, reburn that. Because the topsoil, only a very thin topsoil is fertile. So if you were to continue doing this, your plant's probably not going to live. So most of the time, this is only used once. Occasionally, you can use it twice, but if you use it a couple of times, your plants won't even grow. So you can see that this whole hillside, even the mountainside, has been clear cut, and basically hundreds of acres of them. And then it's planting time. Once you burn it, wait until it's cool, and then you plant it, and then it starts growing, and you harvest rice at the end. So this is very detrimental to basically the environment. If in Laos right now, a lot of the pristine forests are basically being slashed and burned. So I went out there with my wife. We went and visited in 2005, and that's what I see out there. So that's why I'm a little concerned about what's out there. The thing is, a lot of you always, when you talk about old growth forest or jungle, you always talk about South America, but in a lot of places in Asia, a lot of the species haven't even been discovered yet. Plants and animals, or most of the species haven't even been discovered yet. So by doing this, you basically just eliminate it before we even know that's there. Now, coming to America, myself coming to America was basically a bittersweet. My dad, because he was one of the CIA soldiers, so if any enemy would find him, they would basically execute him right on the spot. So my dad really doesn't want to stay in Thailand for long at all. He basically, once he's out here, he registered to the US, and then we came down to the US. So I got the myth or realism. And this is the reason why a lot of the Hmong and also other hill tribe usually a little hesitant to come to the US, even though we're refugee and we're supposed to come out here because during the Vietnam War, the US promised if anything happened or they pulled out, the US will take care of the hill tribe or the Hmong. But there's a lot of myth that deter a lot of the population to come out there. And one of them is Americans are all cannibals. And if you ask any elder Hmong, this is how I was scared of when I was young, because anything that happens, my mom always say, you know what, if you cry, if you disobey, we'll send you to the American base. So cannibalism. 2, super cold, which is cold. So that's very true. So that's 2. 3, America and other part of the world at that time with the hill tribe is considered another room that if you go, you can't come back. It's not like it's on Earth. It's almost like a kingdom somewhere else in a cloud or something. And that even gets worse because when you get on a plane, it flies up to the cloud. So it's like that. And the 4th rumor is white man will take the woman. So these rumors were the rumors in the past, and that deters a lot of the hill tribe from coming to the U.S. Even though they do have the right for refugees in the U.S., a lot of them refuse, and they stay in Thailand, and which causes a lot of problem in Thailand because they're not the Thai usually don't want to take the refugees from the U.S. All right, background education. When I was here, I was a little older. So Battle Creek Elementary, that's my first school that I went in there. And I was just telling Barb this. If you really pronounce my name is Kao, like I mentioned earlier. But when my first day at school, the teacher called attendance and she said Kao, and I didn't know who that is, so I didn't respond at all until they were looking for me outside. Because I had no idea that was my first day. So later on, there's a student that actually came in and translated it. she said, are you Kao? And I basically say, no, I'm speaking Hmong. And so what happened is they found out that my name is actually Kao, and then I was safe. They weren't looking for me anymore. And then I went to Washington Junior High School, which is, I think right now is Wellstone Elementary, or is it Arlington? It used to be Wellstone. Now I think it's Arlington now, isn't it? Yeah, Arlington High School now. So they changed so much, all these schools. And then I went to Como Park and graduated there, and then I went to University of Minnesota. I start out because my dad wanted me to be a doctor, just like any dad, I guess. But guess what? If I see blood, I faint. So there goes that career. So I decided, because at that time Bill Gates was, a billionaire at that time, and the computer age started. So I went to computer science, and believe it or not, I hate it. So that's why I'm not rich. But I spent a year in computer science, and I went down to the science museum. I worked there for a science museum, not computer science related, but for one summer, I actually do computer programming for a science museum. And every single day I come back with a huge headache, because you sit there with the, little 4x4 cubicle with a huge screen, and you just do this all day. So I got such a huge headache. So I was thinking twice about my major. I talked to my advisor at the U. She said, I know that you always talk about the outdoors and you love the outdoors. And I said, yes, I love the outdoors. And she said, how about working at the outdoor? At that time, I had no idea what working out the outdoor is. And she talked about DNR. I have no idea what DNR is. That was when I was at University of Minnesota already. So just think about that time. There wasn't any DNR outreach personnel in school at all. So very few information. And I found out, so I started taking wildlife classes, biology classes, natural resource classes, and I end up at University of Minnesota St. Paul campus, major in fisheries and wildlife, and then minor in computer graphics. And I graduated from there. But before I graduated, I interned with the Department of Natural Resource. During the 3 years, was it 3 or 4? I think it's 4, because I went to school for about 5 years. So I interned with forestry, waters, fisheries, and the last internship was at Fort Salem State Park as a park naturalist intern. I really want to be I basically aiming to be a fisheries technician for DNR fisheries, but I fall in love with being a naturalist. So I started out that. So that was another story. The story was my first day in my fisheries and wildlife class. And how many of you guys graduated from U or went to the U? My first day with about 350 students in the basic fisheries and wildlife class, my professors came out and said, how many of you want to work for the DNR? And it's like 99.9% of the students raised their hand. And what's sad was he said, good luck, because you have to wait until one of those DNR people died. So I remember very well what he said. But, I was having fun with it. And with all the intern, I ended up at Fort Salem State Park. At that time, it was a huge movement in getting people of color into the DNR. So there was a push, and there was a federal grant, and that federal grant, basically a grant to get at least a person of color to work for the DNR in natural resource and state park related. Believe it or not, that grant was written in a way that nobody else except myself is qualified for it, which I don't know why. Because they look around, nobody else got the degree, nobody else that got the experience. So my supervisor at that time, the main naturalist, basically came to me and said, Kyle, this grant is basically for you. So here I am. So that's what it is. Now, well, I got a little more. So that's background. Now, career at the DNR. So this is the first picture on your upper left is when I first started there. You probably don't recognize me by the end of the picture there anymore. And I've been there for I started in 1998 and been there since, doing a lot of program, reach out to a lot of communities, which I'm going to talk about too. So the question is, we're talking about Minnesota. Minnesota is fortunate to have so much, green space, state park, national park, wildlife, in any area. And we also supported by some of the best environmental practice in the nation. So Brian's gonna slap me if I get this wrong. We have about close to 12,000 lakes in Minnesota. We're the land of 10,000 lake. I know, hopefully nobody's from Wisconsin. Wisconsin claim that they have more lakes than Minnesota, but they count any little pond. So now we do have about 6,500 plus natural rivers and streams. National park sites include, Mineral and Voyager National Park, 72 state park and recreational area, about 300 plus counties and regional park, 60 state forests, 2 national forests, 13 national wildlife refuge, about 1,500 acres of WMA. I didn't even mention the other green space, for example, like scientific and natural area. There's a lot more that I didn't even mention, but you can go anywhere in Minnesota and find these green space. So you have no excuses if you have no place to go in Minnesota. Now, Minnesota is changing. Demographically, age-wise, Minnesota is changing. In the last couple of decades here, over half of Minnesota population growth is basically people of color. So that's one of the big changes. The other two is that, we're now at about 20% Minnesota people of color, according to the Minnesota State Demographic Center there. And right now, this year, 35 of the 201 members of the House and Senate are people of color, 30 Democrat, 5 Republican. And I'm going to elaborate why I mentioned this. Age demographics is overturning. So when I started at DNR, a lot of people talk about the baby boomers. Of course, you guys probably know what that is. But now are the generation Z and Y and X and millennium and some other letter that I don't even know are taking the jobs. So it's overturning, and things are turning, and that's what we have to look into. Recreational preference are expanding. We don't have just regular sports anymore that we used to have historically. Sports are expanding. People are getting involved in other extreme sports or other sports that involve some of the green spaces that we normally don't have in the past. I mean, in the past, you probably don't have anybody looking for Pokemon on their cell phone at a state park, but all these things are starting to change. So green space is, technically you go there to hike, to look at birds, to look at plants, but now people go to capture Pokemon. So there's a lot of stuff. Politics and law are becoming more inclusive. That means it's not broad anymore. It's more pinpoint, inclusive in terms of, any laws in Minnesota at all. All right. Why do I become a park naturalist? So here's one that's really nice. Love outdoors. Just like all of us, I love the outdoors. And that's one of the reasons why my advisor in college point me to the DNR is because I always love the outdoors. I always enjoy the outdoor. I'm not a good hunter, which I should, because my wife wanted some squirrels and I never hunt. But I like fishing when I have time. My kids always beg me to take them fishing, and I said I'm just too busy because I'm watching the news. Just kidding. So, I love the outdoors. Also, preservation, conservation, and as I mentioned, this is connected to the slash and burn. the slide that I showed you guys earlier, I see things changes. I see a lot of things changes, and I want to preserve the stuff that Mother Earth provide, the stuff that we have. So stewardship, I seen that nowadays a lot of time there's a divide between those who really are into stewardship and those who just really don't care. There's a huge divide on that right now. So I want to make sure that, you know, that we have a limited resource, and, you know, we need to preserve it and conserve it and take good care of it. Culture and emergent ideas. And this is what we're talking about too. Bridging non-mainstream Minnesota about the state's resources, limited resources, and regulations. So a lot of time, not just people from other countries, but even people from other states coming to Minnesota, probably the rules are different, the laws are different. So I want to bridge that to the non-mainstream Minnesotans about basically what we have by teaching. Also inform or bridge mainstream Minnesotans about the different cultures and practice and usage of resources and other beliefs in Minnesota, so we could understand how the resources are used, how we can maintain that, how we can merge the idea together and create a balance. Otherwise, you'll divide everybody. Now, for reward, being a personal color naturalist, reward is basically, I always told that I'm a role model to a lot of the people of color population as one of the DNR naturalists. So it works great. These little girls here, in fact, the reason I put this is I forgot which one. This was a long time ago. You notice how young I was in that picture. But it was a long time ago, and I actually had one of those girls as one of my intern a couple years ago. So, you know, they grow up, they really want to be what you are, and a great role model. The other thing too is a lot of time when I started out as a park naturalist, I have no role, role model. You know, I don't see anybody like me doing the job that I'm doing. Even I'm interested in, I feel like I don't belong. And a lot of time that's how I feel when I started as a park naturalist. So it's a little difficult. So that's what it is. Community connection. I do this at a challenge and reward. I'll say next other one too, but it's rewarding to connect with different communities around the state. A lot of communities have different belief system, different uses, and to understand all these communities and put it together, and then you tell your point from Minnesota view point or environmental point. It's great. It's really rewarding just to see somebody light up and say, hey, yeah, I can do that, or yeah, that's perfect, or I said, yeah, that's great. We could work together on this. Barriers, breaking barrier. I've been doing this. In fact, down at Fort Snelling State Park, that's a very, very important American Indian site, the Dakota site down there, a sacred site down there. And I talk a lot about the Dakota and the area, talk about U.S. history, especially at Fort Snelling State Park. In fact, it was so funny because a couple years ago, I was doing a Dakota Bedote talk with American history, and there's a lady that came in, and the lady said, I'm really amazed because even with your accent, and I said, yeah, I wasn't born in the US, I was born in Laos. And she said, yeah, I'm so amazed because my grandpa born in Minnesota, my dad was born in Minnesota, I was born in Minnesota, and here you are teaching American history to me. So you know, it's great to do something like that. Being the first Southeast Asian naturalist in the nation is very challenging because when I told my family, not just my immediate family, but my extended family, a lot of time they have no idea what a park naturalist is. In fact, my dad didn't even know. He just started to understand what I do when he passed away in 2008. But my dad, when I told him I am a park naturalist, he thought that I am one of the narrator for nature show, like what's his name, the British BBC, yeah, Edinburgh. So he thought I was gonna become one of the like Edinburgh. So it was funny. But then overall, and I start telling him about what naturalist does, and then he passed away. Community connection and outreach is really, really, it's also a challenge. And one of the reasons I say it's a reward and challenge is that a lot of time when I go out and teach, most of the time the group expects a white guy, not a white woman, not somebody else, a white guy from the DNR to go and talk to them. And it's challenged because when they see me coming out, they go, "Oh, okay, that's cool." But you know that's always the challenge. Sometimes breaking barrier, it is also difficult too. Of course, everybody know that a lot of people have their own way of thinking, and sometimes it's hard for them to deviate from their thought process and deviate from their way. So it is difficult, and this is not just you know the white audience or the African American audience or the Asians or Latino audience. This is everybody. And I experienced that it's really hard sometimes to get into these communities and sometimes break that barrier to say, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it is, and this is how it works. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes and barrier, but you know the thing about that too, and I put it in reward is that once you break that barrier, then it's all great. All right, now. So the question is what now? What now is that I want all Minnesotans to understand how important it is to protect our planet's resources. Believe it or not, but my previous assistant park manager, every time I talk to him about climate change, he doesn't believe in climate change. So we always joke around, but he doesn't believe in climate change at all. But yeah, it's like that. So it's really important to talk about the resources, and this is connected to the picture of slash and burn that I showed you guys earlier. The other thing is to recruit more people of color into the outdoor. There's hurdles and overcomes or step to overcome this. Now I'm going to explain this a little bit in later, but it is really, really, really hard to recruit people of color into outdoor jobs. And I'm pretty sure Brian with National Park, sorry I pick on you, probably seen this too. So when I do outreach at high school in the Twin City here, all the students, for example, that's Harding High School right there. And when I do program for elementary, junior high, and high school, you have like half of the group. Doesn't matter if they're people of color or anybody else. All these kids was like, oh, your job is so exciting. I want to do what you do. I want to be working outdoor and get paid for it. I want to teach people at the outdoor. Guess what? When you go and talk to a college group, none of those people exist. And we don't know why, but here's the answer. For those communities, and my answer is always about survival. A lot of them, they consider a job like my job a leisure job. You're out there, it's fun, you don't get paid a lot, but because you love your job, you do it because of leisure. It's considered a privileged job, not a job that you can survive on, or not a job that will provide for you. It's a leisure job. So this thinking process is almost like a short-term survival compared to the long-term survival of protection of the environment. And I can understand that. Right now, if you rent an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment is probably $1,000 anywhere you go. These college kids, they have no money. A lot of the people of color, they have very little money. So the students, instead of pursuing what they love, they are helping their family, trying to make that money. They're helping themselves to get a better job. In fact, to have an intern at the DNR pay much lower than to work at McDonald's. Um, so this is one of the points. So they either go for a degree or go for a job that pay a lot. And that's why there's a lot of nursing right now with a lot of people in of color, or they just never think of environmental job, even though they'll care about it. That's not how they're gonna survive right now. So it's right now that I'm gonna survive because I can't think of the survivor in the future if I can't survive right now. So that's a point that's really hard to get a student of color to work for the DNR. And trust me, I'd outreach in all the university and colleges in the Twin City here, and a few of them say yes, they're interested, but most of them they're just like, you know what, that's how it is because I need that money right now. I can't wait until my apple tree grows and eat that apple. So that's why it's super hard to get to recruit people of color to work for outdoor fields. Right now, the DNR and National Park is doing really good. Now, the number is increasing, but I almost got fired for doing that. So I'm not going to tell that story. Maybe one of these days when we have coffee, I will. All right. So what is the goal? What is the goal? Audubon Society. What is your goal? I read the mission statement. It's perfect. Now let's implement it. And this is my point. I know Barbara and I have a little conversation in the beginning, talk about the Hmong farmers. If you notice, a lot of the farmers market are usually populated by Hmong farmers, and even very old ladies or I don't know, men's out there and out farm. In fact, when I was growing up, my mom always said, "Dad, after you do our homework, let's go to the farm, let's go to the garden and work." So basically, it's that survival of, yeah, you finish your homework, let's go work for food. It's that mentality because it's survival instinct to take you there. So throughout my childhood in St. Paul, basically I spent most of the time in a farm or in a garden, doing a little garden to provide for the family. And when I was in high school, I was one of the black sheep in my family. I don't know if you guys know that. I shouldn't tell you that, but I was one of the first, basically Southeast Asian students that actually played basketball for Como High School. Of course, I'm 5'4", and most of the people I play with are close to about 7 feet. So, yeah, 6 feet. So it's a little hard. But that's the thing is that I want to do something different. I want to do something different than normal everybody else. So the reason I have here is that to recruit for an organization. To recruit for organizations, you don't start right now, because right now, I mean, you don't grab it right now. You grab it when it's younger and you raise it up and do that. And I say a lot of organizations that basically, I understand the policies, the mission statements, and everything else that says in there, but when you look at the demographic, it's not there. And because of the grabbing techniques is that you start younger and then you go up, and you also provide information, a lot of information, outreach for it, and that's how it is. So a lot of the people of color, they really do want leisure time, like bird watching or doing other stuff. But what you see are they're in the garden, or they're either fishing, And it's all about food. It's all about survival and not leisure. So that's one of the short answer to getting that. And like I said, any organization at all, the Nature Conservancy or any organization, they're just having a hard time getting people of color, and that's one of the main reasons there. It because people of color doesn't consider, something like this. I mean, it is joyful, it's fun, as leisure, but then to survive first, and that's one of the reasons why it's really hard. Even I'm trying to get volunteer at Fort Lauderdale State Park, and I couldn't get any person of color. So blah 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 DNR stuff that I have to put in there. So hopefully I don't take too long. Wow. So if you have any question, you can just give me a call, email me any question at all. If you guys want to come out to Fort Lauderdale State Park and bird watch, I usually do maybe once a month or once every 2 months, birding for beginner, but you folks are not beginner anymore. So come out there and give me some hint too. All right, questions?